The great hall of the Galactic Assembly was filled with hundreds of alien species. Some were tall and thin. Others were short and round. A few had wings. Many had tentacles. They came from thousands of worlds spread across the galaxy. They gathered here to make laws, solve problems, and keep peace among the stars. But today, there was no peace to be found. Ambassador Vela stood at the center of the hall. He was a Kelari, a gentle species that looked like deer walking on two legs. His fur was gray with age, and his large eyes were filled with tears. His hand shook as he held a small device that showed images of his home world. "Please," Veleth begged. "The Varath Empire has demanded our surrender. They want our planet. They want our people as slaves. We have no army. We have no weapons. We are farmers and artists and teachers. Please, we need your help." The hall was silent for a moment. Then came the laughter. It started from the Varath section, where a dozen massive reptilian warriors sat in specially made chairs. They were huge, each one standing over 8 feet tall. Their scales were dark green, their eyes were yellow, and their teeth were sharp as knives. They had conquered over 200 worlds. They feared nothing and no one. Warlord Gorthax, the leader of the Varath forces, stood up. He was the biggest of them all, nearly 9 feet tall. His armor was black and covered with the bones of his enemies. "Look at this pathetic creature," Gorthax said, his voice booming through the hall, begging like a wounded animal. "Your world belongs to us now. Accept it." The Galactic Assembly did nothing. They made speeches about peace. They talked about rules and laws. But everyone knew the truth. No one wanted to fight the Varath. No one wanted to die for a small planet of farmers. In the end, the Assembly offered only token help. They would send a coalition force to defend Meridian 7. This force would have 847 soldiers from various minor species. It was not meant to win. It was meant to look like the Assembly was doing something while actually doing nothing. Ambassador Veleth accepted this help with a broken heart. It was better than nothing, he told himself. But deep inside, he knew his people were doomed. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, Captain Do-Hyun received his orders. He sat in his small apartment, reading the message on his screen. His face showed no emotion, but his mind was racing. Earth was considered a backwater world by galactic standards. Humans had only been part of the Assembly for 50 years. They were small compared to most species. They were not particularly strong or fast. They had no special powers or advanced technology. Most aliens looked at humans the way humans looked at ants. Do-Hyun was 34 years old. He had short black hair, a scar running down his left cheek, and eyes that had seen too much death. He had fought in the border wars 5 years ago, when pirates attacked human colonies. He had lost many friends in those battles. He had learned many lessons. The most important lesson was this: size does not matter in war. Will matters. Training matters. The refusal to give up matters. His orders were simple. He would take 11 soldiers to Meridian 7. They would join the coalition force. They would help defend the planet. 12 humans. Against the Varath Empire. Do-Hyun smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who knew exactly what he was getting into. He gathered his team the next morning. They met in a small briefing room at the military base. Lieutenant Yuna was his second in command. She was 29, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had studied every military tactic in human history. She could look at a battlefield and see things others missed. Sergeant Taiwu was the heavy weapons specialist. He was a big man by human standards, quiet and calm. He never said much, but when he spoke, people listened. When he fired his weapon, enemies died. Corporal Menji was the sniper. She had 47 confirmed kills from the border wars. Her hands never shook. Her aim never missed. She could shoot a target from 2 kilometers away while drinking coffee. Specialist Junho handled demolitions. He could make a bomb from almost anything. He could blow up a building or open a locked door with equal skill. He smiled too much for someone in his profession. Private G1 was the medic. He had gentle hands and a dark sense of humor. He told jokes while stitching wounds. He said it helped the patients relax. Private Surgeon was the youngest, only 22. She handled communications and technology. She was small and thin, and she had something to prove. She had joined the military against her family's wishes. She wanted to show them she was not weak. The others were equally skilled. Each one had been chosen carefully. Each one had proven themselves in combat. Do-hyun stood before them and explained the mission. He showed them images of the Varth. He showed them the size of the enemy army. He showed them the planet they would defend. When he finished, the room was quiet. Questions? Do-hyun asked. Yuna raised her hand. Sir, the reports say the Varth are sending 40,000 soldiers. There will be less than 1,000 of us. The math is not good. The math is never good, Do-hyun replied. That is why we train. That is why we fight smarter, not harder. Junho laughed. So, we are going to die on some planet nobody has heard of, fighting lizards twice our size, to save dear people we have never met? Yes, Do-hyun said simply. Sounds fun, Junho said. I am in. One by one, the others nodded. They did not need speeches about honor or duty. They were soldiers. This was their job. 3 days later, they arrived at Meridian 7. The planet was beautiful, covered in green forests and blue oceans. The Kalari cities were made of crystal and glass, shining in the sunlight. It looked like a paradise. The coalition force was already gathering near the capital city of Starfall. Do-hyun saw soldiers from a dozen species. Most of them looked scared. Most of them had never seen real combat. Commander Koros, a tall Pelian with purple skin, was in charge. He welcomed Do-hyun with a weak handshake. Ah, the humans, Koros said, looking down at them. You are. Smaller than I expected. We get that a lot, Do-hyun replied. Above them, the sky grew dark. Vorath warships were entering orbit. Thousands of them. The ground shook as troop transports began their descent. The battle for Meridian 7 was about to begin. And 12 humans were ready to show the galaxy what they were made of. The Vorath army landed 10 kilometers outside Starfall. 40,000 warriors in black armor poured out of their transports. They moved like a dark wave across the green fields, crushing flowers and grass beneath their heavy boots. The ground trembled under their march. Warlord Gorthax stood on a hill and watched his army gather. He was pleased. This would be an easy victory. The defenders were few, weak, and scared. His scouts had already sent back images of the coalition force. Pathetic, Gorthax growled as he looked at the pictures. Look at them. Half of them are shaking. The other half look like they want to run. His general, Vorthik, stood beside him. Vorthik was old for a Vorath, with scars covering his scales. He had fought in many wars. He had learned to be careful. What about these ones? Vorthik asked, pointing at a small group in the images. I do not recognize their species. Gorthax looked closer. He saw 12 small figures working near the main gate. They were moving dirt, carrying equipment, setting up positions. They looked tiny compared to everyone else. Those? Gorthax laughed. They call themselves humans. They come from some worthless planet on the edge of the galaxy. Look at them. They are smaller than children. What can they possibly do? They seem to be working hard, Vorthik observed. Let them work, Gorthax said. It will not matter. Send 5,000 warriors to the main gate. Crush these insects and open the city. At the main gate, Captain Do-hyun wiped sweat from his face. He had not slept in 2 days. Neither had his team. They had spent every moment preparing their position. The other coalition soldiers thought they were crazy. Why dig holes in the ground? Why put bags of sand in front of their position? Why set up strange devices in the field ahead? Lieutenant Yuna tried to explain to Commander Koros. Sir, your defensive formation will not work against the Vorth. They do not follow the traditional rules of engagement. They will charge directly at our weakest point. Koros waved his hand dismissively. We have followed these formations for centuries. They are time-tested and proper. Your strange human methods are not needed. Then give us the main gate, Yuna said. It is the most dangerous position. No one else wants it. Koros agreed quickly. He did not expect the gate to hold anyway. Putting the humans there meant he did not have to waste real soldiers on a lost cause. That night, the humans worked by the light of small lamps. Sergeant Taiwu set up his heavy weapon with perfect care. He cleaned every part, checked every connection. This gun was his life. It would keep his team alive. Corporal Minji found a high position in a damaged building near the gate. She tested the range to different points on the field. She memorized distances. She prepared her ammunition. Specialist Junho buried explosives in the ground. He marked each location on a small map. He smiled as he worked. When they step on these, they will have a very bad day. He said to no one in particular. Private G1 set up a medical station behind the main position. He organized bandages, medicine, and tools. He hoped he would not need most of them. He knew he probably would. Private Sujin tested her communication equipment. She made sure she could reach every member of the team. She made sure she could hear everything. She made sure she could hear everything. Information was as important as bullets. Captain Do-hyun walked among them, checking their work, offering quiet words of encouragement. He was proud of these soldiers. They did not complain. They did not question. They simply prepared. At dawn, the Vorth came. 5,000 warriors marched toward the main gate. They did not bother with tactics. Why would they? The defenders were just a handful of small aliens, and some even smaller humans. This would be over in minutes. Gorthax watched from his command post. He raised a communication device to his mouth. Citizens of Starfall, he announced. His voice broadcast across the city. Watch your defenders fail. Watch your hope die. Then surrender, and perhaps I will let some of you live. In the city, terrified Kalari families huddled in their homes. They held their children close. They prayed to whatever gods they believed in. At the gate, Do-hyun raised his hand. Hold fire, he said calmly. Let them come closer. The Vorth were 500 meters away, then 400, then 300. Sir? Sujin asked, her voice nervous. The enemy looked like a wall of death approaching them. Hold, Do-hyun repeated. 200 meters. The Vorth were running now, roaring their battle cries. The sound was terrifying. Some coalition soldiers at other positions began to flee. 100 meters. Now, Do-hyun said quietly. Junho pressed a button. The ground erupted. Fire and dirt flew into the air. Dozens of Vorth disappeared in the explosions. The perfect formation broke into chaos. Before the survivors could recover, Minji began shooting. Her first bullet took the head off a Vorth commander. Her second killed his second in command. Her third, fourth, and fifth dropped more officers. Within seconds, the front lines had no leadership. Then Taiwu opened fire with the heavy weapon. The gun roared like an angry beast. Vorth warriors fell in rows, cut down like wheat before a blade. They had never faced anything like this. Their armor, which protected them against most weapons, was useless against a human gun. The Vorth tried to charge forward. They ran into more explosives. They ran into more bullets. They died by the dozens, then by the hundreds. Some tried to retreat. Minji shot them in the back. She felt no guilt. They would have killed everyone in the city. They deserved no mercy. After 2 hours, it was over. 2,000 Vorath lay dead in front of the main gate. The rest had fled. Not a single human was even injured. At his command post, Gorthax could not believe the reports. Impossible, he growled. 2,000. Dead? Against a dozen tiny creatures? Your reports must be wrong. The reports are accurate, Warlord, Vorthix said carefully. The humans, they fight differently. They use the ground. They use traps. Their weapons are effective. Then send more warriors, Gorthax ordered. Send 10,000. Crush them with numbers. Vorthix nodded, but inside he felt the first touch of doubt. He had studied many species in his long career. He had never seen anything fight like those 12 humans. At the gate, Doyun allowed his team a short rest. They ate quickly, checked their weapons, and prepared for the next assault. That was fun, Junho said, reloading his equipment. They will send more next time, Yuna warned. Probably twice as many. Maybe with armor and air support. Then we will kill twice as many, Taiwu said simply. Ambassador Velith came to the gate that evening. He looked at the field covered with Vorath bodies. He looked at the 12 humans who had done this. His eyes were wide with wonder. How? He whispered. How did you do this? Dohyun looked at the old Kelari and shrugged. We are human, he said. This is what we do. That night, Yuna studied captured Vorath equipment. She found weaknesses. She made plans. Tomorrow would be harder, but they would be ready. In the city, people began to whisper. They whispered about the tiny soldiers who held the gate. They whispered about humans. For the first time since the invasion began, they whispered about hope. The second day began with fire from the sky. Vorath aircraft screamed over the city, dropping bombs on coalition positions. Buildings exploded. Crystal towers shattered. The beautiful city of Starfall began to burn at the main gate. The humans dove into their trenches as explosions rocked the ground around them. Dirt and stone rained down on them. The noise was deafening. Is everyone alive? Do-hyun shouted over the chaos. Still here. Yuna replied. Alive and angry. Junho added. When the bombing stopped, the ground assault began. 10,000 Vorath warriors charged toward the gate. This time, they brought armored vehicles. Heavy tanks rolled across the field, crushing the bodies of their own dead from yesterday. Lieutenant Yuna had spent the night studying captured Vorath equipment. She had found something useful. A weakness in their armor, right at the neck joint. A small gap where the plates did not connect properly. She shared this information with the team. Within minutes, everyone adjusted their aim. The battle was longer this time. Harder. The Vorath had learned from yesterday. They spread out instead of bunching together. They used their tanks for cover. They moved more carefully. But the humans adapted. Junho ran out into the field during a brief pause in fighting. He placed explosives directly under a tank that had stopped to fire. He barely made it back to the trenches before the explosion turned the vehicle into a fireball. That was insane, Sujin said, her eyes wide. Yes, Junho agreed happily. It was. Minji found new positions throughout the day, never staying in one place too long. The Vorath tried to find her, to silence her deadly rifle. They failed. Every time they thought they knew where she was, she had already moved. And another officer fell with a hole in his neck. Taiwu's heavy weapon never stopped firing. The barrel grew so hot that it glowed red. He poured water on it to keep it working. When one ammunition box emptied, he grabbed another without pause. Private Jiwon worked constantly behind the lines. The coalition soldiers from other species had started coming to the main gate position. They had heard about the humans. They wanted to fight beside them. Some of them got hurt. Jiwan treated them all. A Pelion with a burned arm. A Morvith with a chest wound. A young Kalari volunteer who had picked up a dead soldier's weapon and joined the fight. "You are going to be fine," Jiwan told each of them, even when he was not sure it was true. Sometimes a kind lie was the best medicine. As the sun moved across the sky, the humans began to take real casualties for the first time. Specialist Jonho was setting another explosive when a piece of shrapnel tore through his left arm. The limb hung useless at his side. Blood poured from the wound. Jiwan rushed to help him. "We need to get you to the back," the medic said. "You have lost too much blood." Junho pushed him away with his good arm. "Bandage it and give me something for the pain," he said through gritted teeth. "I can still fight with one hand." Jiwan wanted to argue. He knew the rules. He knew what proper medical care required. But he also knew Junho. The man would fight until he died or until the battle was won. He bandaged the arm tightly and gave Junho an injection for pain. Junho picked up his detonator and went back to work. Later that afternoon, Sujin took a plasma blast directly to her chest. Her body armor saved her life, but the impact broke 3 ribs. She could barely breathe. Every movement sent waves of pain through her body. Dahyun found her slumped against a wall, still holding her communication equipment. "You need to rest," he said gently. "I can still do my job, sir," she whispered. "I can still talk. I can still listen. Put me somewhere safe, and I will keep working." He carried her to a protected position and set her down carefully. She smiled through the pain and raised her radio to her ear. She did not stop working until the battle ended. By the time night fell, the Varath had lost 8,000 more soldiers. Their tanks were burning wrecks. Their officers were dead or hiding. Their army was confused and frightened. At the Varath command post, General Varthak delivered his report to Warlord Gorthax. His voice was careful, but his words were heavy. "The humans cannot be killed," soldiers were saying. "They are demons. They feel no pain. They never tire. They see in the dark." Gorthax roared with anger. "They are just small creatures made of meat and bone. They can die like anything else." "Yes, Warlord," Vorthak agreed. "But they make us pay dearly for every step forward. At this rate, we will lose half our army taking this city. Then we will lose half our army." Gorthax shouted. "I will not be defeated by insects." But even as he spoke, Gorthax felt something unfamiliar in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was doubt. In the city. Word of the battle spread quickly. Kalari citizens who had hidden in fear began to emerge. They brought food and water to the defenders. They helped carry wounded soldiers. They cleaned weapons and prepared ammunition. A young Kalari child named Hana became separated from her family during the bombing. She was only 7 years old, small and scared and alone. Private Jiwan found her crying in the ruins of a building. "Hey there," he said softly, kneeling down to her level. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her furry face. "What is your name?" "Hana," she whispered. "That is a beautiful name," Jiwan said. "I am going to help you find your family. But first, you need to come with me to somewhere safe. Can you do that?" She nodded and took his hand. From that moment, she did not leave his side. When he treated wounded soldiers, she helped by handing him bandages. When he talked to dying men, she held their hands so they would not be alone. That night, Ambassador Veleth visited the gate again. He brought food and medicine and his deepest thanks. "The other coalition positions are failing," he told Doyen. "The eastern wall has almost fallen. The northern defense is broken. Only here, at your gate, do we still stand strong." Dawn nodded. He had heard the reports. Commander Koros had lost 60% of his soldiers. His careful formations had crumbled against the Vorath assault. He was now hiding in a bunker, afraid to show his face. "Why do you keep fighting?" Velith asked. "You could surrender. The Vorath might spare you. You are not Kelari. This is not your world." Dahan was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his soldiers. He looked at Hana, asleep in Jiwan's arms. He looked at the bodies of Vorath warriors spread across the field. "Because someone has to," he finally said. "Because if good people do nothing, evil wins. Because we are human, and this is what we do." Velith did not fully understand, but he felt something he had not felt in days. He felt hope dawn above them. The stars shone cold and distant. The galaxy was watching. The story of 12 humans holding a gate against an empire was spreading from world to world. And somewhere in the darkness of space, ships were changing course. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? Day 4 began with silence. The Vorath did not attack at dawn. They did not attack at noon. They waited. They gathered. They prepared. From the gate, the humans could see the enemy army growing. More transports landed. More warriors joined the horde. The dark mass on the horizon grew larger and larger. "They are bringing everyone," Yuna said, looking through her viewing scope. "I counted at least 35,000. Dohim nodded slowly. Their ammunition was running low. Half his team was wounded. The other coalition positions had completely fallen. Only the main gate still held, defended by 12 humans and about 200 volunteers who had joined them. 200 against 35,000. Behind them, the city was surrounded. The spaceport had been destroyed. There was no evacuation. There was no retreat. There was only the gate, and whatever time they could buy for the civilians hiding in the city. Sergeant Taiwu came to Doyen with a report. "Heavy weapon is damaged," he said. "It only fires in short bursts now. Maybe 50 more shots before it fails completely." "Make them count," Doyen replied. Junho approached next. His left arm was wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were still sharp, still focused. "I am out of the big explosives," he said. "I have a few small charges left. Enough to make some noise, not enough to stop an army." Sujin leant over, clutching her broken ribs. Every breath was painful, but she refused to stop working. "Communications are getting strange," she reported. "I am picking up a lot of chatter from outside the system. Something is happening out there. Reinforcements?" Yuna asked hopefully. "I do not know. The signals are too far away to decode clearly." Dohyun looked at his team. They were broken, bleeding, exhausted. Any other soldiers would have surrendered by now. Any other species would have given up. But humans did not give up. It was not in their nature. "Get some rest," he ordered. "Eat something. The Vorath will attack soon. This will be the big one. They are going to throw everything they have at us." Minji climbed down from her sniper position. She had 17 rounds left. 17 bullets. She would make each one count. "I still have my knife," she said calmly. "When the bullets run out, I will use that." Jiwon was treating wounded volunteers when little Hana brought him water. The child had not left his side in 2 days. She had seen things no child should see, but she had also shown courage beyond her years. "Are we going to die?" she asked quietly. Jiwon paused his work. He looked at her young face, her innocent eyes. He could lie. He probably should lie. But she deserved the truth. "Maybe," he said softly. "But if we do, we die fighting for something good. We die protecting people who cannot protect themselves. That is not a bad way to go." Hana nodded. She did not cry. She simply handed him more bandages and continued helping. At midday, the Vorath attacked. 35,000 warriors charged the main gate. The ground shook with their footsteps. Their war cry was so loud it could be heard across the city. Kalari civilians covered their ears and screamed in terror. The humans did not scream. They raised their weapons and fired. Taiwu's damaged gun roared in bursts of 3 and 4 shots. Each burst dropped Vorath warriors. He counted the rounds in his head. 45 left, 40, 35. Minji fired from a new position, picking off officers with cold precision. 15 rounds, 14, 13. Junho waited until a group of Vorath clustered together, then detonated his last charges. The explosions were small compared to before, but they still killed and wounded dozens. The volunteers fought bravely alongside the humans. They had learned from watching. They aimed for neck joints. They used cover. They worked as a team. But there were too many Vorath. For everyone that fell, 10 more took their place. The wave of green scales and black armor pushed closer and closer. The gate began to fall. Vorath warriors broke through the outer defenses. They poured into the gap, clashing directly with the defenders. The fighting became hand-to-hand. Yuna grabbed a fallen Vorath weapon and used it to shoot 3 enemies at close range. When it ran out of power, she used it as a club. Taiwu's gun finally died. He dropped it and pulled out his sight-on. 6 shots. 6 Vorath fell. Then he drew his knife and kept fighting. Minji ran out of sniper rounds. She switched to her pistol, then to her knife. She killed 11 Vorath in close combat before a lucky blow knocked her unconscious. A volunteer dragged her to safety. And then there was Captain Doyan. The Vorath finally breached the gate itself. They poured through the gap, expecting easy prey. They found something else entirely. Dohyun met them in the breach, alone. His rifle roared until it was empty. He killed the first Vorath with his last bullet. He drew his sidearm. 7 shots. 7 more enemies fell. Then his pistol was empty too. He dropped it and pulled his knife. The Vorath were twice his size. They were stronger, faster, covered in armor. But Dohyun had spent his entire life training for moments like this. He knew exactly where to strike. He moved like water, like shadow, like death itself. He killed the 3rd Vorath with a thrust to the neck joint. The 4th died when Dohyun jammed his knife into the soft tissue under its arm. The 5th fell when Dohyun used its own weapon against it. The 6th Vorath grabbed Dohyun and lifted him off the ground. It squeezed, trying to crush the life out of him. Dohyun could feel his ribs bending, could feel the air leaving his lungs. He reached up with his bare hands and found the creature's eyes. A moment later, the Vorath dropped him and fell dead. Dohyun stood in the breach, covered in blood that was mostly not his own. He looked at the army beyond the gate. Thousands of Vorath stared back at him. "Come on!" He screamed at them. "Is that all you have? We are still here. We are still standing." A Vorath soldier was filming everything. The video was sent back to command. Within hours, it would spread across the entire galaxy. Billions would see the tiny human, standing alone against an empire, screaming defiance at overwhelming odds. The Vorath attack faltered, stopped. For the first time in their history, a Vorath army retreated from a battle they were winning. General Vorthek watched the footage in silence. His hands were shaking. He had fought 100 battles. He had never felt fear like this. "What are these creatures?" he whispered. No one answered him. That night, both sides waited. The Vorath gathered more forces. The humans tried to rest, tried to heal, tried to prepare for what they knew was coming. Dohyun stood at the ruined gate, looking at the stars. His body was broken. He had cracked ribs, deep cuts, and bruises everywhere. But he was still alive. They were all still alive. Yuna came to stand beside him. "They will attack again tomorrow," she said, "with everything they have. We cannot hold them forever." "I know," Do-yoon replied. "So, what do we do?" He turned to look at her. Despite everything, despite the pain and the exhaustion and the hopeless odds, he smiled. "We do what humans have always done. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. And then we fight some more." Yuna laughed softly. "You are crazy, sir." "Yes," he agreed. "But I am also human. And that means I do not know how to quit." In the sky above, unseen by anyone on the ground, points of light began to appear. Ships dropping out of hyperspace. Hundreds of them. Help was finally coming. But first, there would be one more battle. The biggest battle of all. Day 7 began with the sound of thunder. 50,000 Varath warriors stood ready to attack. Every soldier in the army. Every vehicle. Every weapon. Warlord Gorthax had decided to end this with overwhelming force. No more games. No more caution. Just pure, unstoppable power. At the ruined gate, 12 humans prepared to die. They knew it was the end. There was no more ammunition for the heavy weapons. The explosives were gone. Most of them were wounded, some badly. They had maybe 100 volunteers still able to fight, but none of them complained. None of them cried. They checked their equipment one last time and waited. Lieutenant Yuna counted her remaining bullets. 4 magazines. Maybe 120 rounds. Sergeant Taiwu held his knife. His gun was useless now, a piece of dead metal. Corporal Minji had 17 rounds left. She planned to save the last one for herself rather than be captured. Specialist Junho, his left arm hanging dead at his side, held a small explosive in his good hand. One last charge. One last surprise for the enemy. Private Sujin, barely able to breathe through her broken ribs, kept her radio pressed to her ear. She was still listening, still hoping to hear something from outside the system. Private Jaiwan stood with little Hana hiding behind his legs. The child had refused to leave. She said she wanted to be brave like the humans. Jiwon did not have the heart to send her away. Captain Do-hyun walked among his soldiers one final time. He had no grand words, no speeches about glory or honor. He simply looked each of them in the eyes and nodded. They understood. They were family now. They would die together. The Varath war drums began to beat. The army started to move. 50,000 warriors marched toward the gate, their footsteps shaking the earth. Gord Hax watched from his command position. "Today it ends," he growled. "Crush them. Leave nothing behind." Don raised his rifle. "Here they come," he said calmly. The first Varath were 500 meters away. Then 400. Then 300. Yuna was about to give the order to fire when Sujin suddenly screamed, "Sir, I have contact." Multiple ships entering the system. "Varath reinforcements?" Do-hyun asked, his heart sinking. "No, sir." Sujin's voice cracked with emotion. "The signals, they are human. They are ours." Above them, the sky split open with light. 200 human warships dropped out of hyperspace directly over Starfall. Massive battleships, sleek destroyers, countless fighters. The Earth flag flew on every hull, and they were not alone. Behind the human fleet came more ships. 73 vessels from 12 different species. Pelians, Gasari, Morvith. Species that had been pushed around by the Varath for centuries. Species that had finally found the courage to stand up. The sight was so beautiful that Do-hyun felt tears forming in his eyes. A voice thundered across all communication channels. It was Fleet Admiral Sungwoo, commander of the combined fleet. "Varath forces. This is the United Earth Navy. You are in violation of Galactic Assembly Resolution 7742. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin withdrawal. If you do not comply, we will demonstrate why our species spent 10,000 years learning to kill each other before we met you. The Vorath army stopped. 50,000 warriors looked up at the sky, seeing hundreds of ships where moments ago there had been nothing. Gorthax roared with rage. Attack! Continue the attack. We can still win. But his generals hesitated. Their fleet in orbit was already burning. Human warships were tearing through the Vorath vessels like knives through paper. And more coalition ships were appearing every minute. The 60 seconds passed. Admiral Sungu kept his promise. The bombardment was precise and devastating. Human ships targeted Vorath armor, Vorath artillery, Vorath command positions. They avoided civilian areas completely. They did not want destruction. They wanted surrender. At the same time, dropships fell from the sky like rain. They landed all around Starfall, opening to release thousands of fresh human marines. Real human marines. Armed, rested, and very angry. They charged the Vorath army from every direction. The enemy that had seemed so overwhelming moments ago now found itself surrounded, outgunned, and facing soldiers who were eager for payback. The battle lasted less than an hour. Warlord Gorthax refused to surrender. He gathered his personal guard and charged toward the main gate. If he was going to die, he wanted to kill the humans who had humiliated him first. He never reached them. Captain Do-hyun saw the warlord coming. Despite his wounds, despite his exhaustion, he walked forward to meet him. They faced each other in the middle of the battlefield. The giant Vorath, nearly 9 feet tall, covered in black armor. The small human, barely reaching Gorthax's chest, holding only a knife. You, Gorthax snarled. You ruined everything. You were supposed to be nothing. Insects to be crushed. We get that a lot, Do-hyun replied. Gorthax attacked with all his rage. His blade was huge, heavy enough to cut a human in half with one swing. But Do-hyun was not there when the blade fell. He moved like smoke, like a ghost. Every attack missed. Every swing hit only air. And then Do-hyun struck. His knife found the gap in Gorthax's armor. The same gap that Yuna had discovered days ago. The blade went deep into the warlord's neck. Gorthax fell to his knees. His yellow eyes were wide with disbelief. How? He gasped. How did you beat us? There were only 12 of you. Do-hyun pulled his knife free. 12 humans, he corrected. That was your mistake. You counted us and saw a small number. You should have run. Gorthax died with confusion on his face. He never understood. The Vorath had conquered 200 worlds because they were big, strong, and brutal. They could not comprehend a species that was small but refused to lose. The remaining Vorath surrendered. General Vorthik ordered his troops to lay down their weapons. He was the only senior officer left alive, and he knew when to accept defeat. The battle for Meridian 7 was over. In the aftermath, Captain Do-hyun sat against the ruined gate. His body had finally given out. He could not stand. He could barely keep his eyes open. Lil Hana found him there. She crawled into his lap and fell asleep immediately, exhausted from days of fear and bravery. Do-hyun wrapped his arms around her and leaned his head back. That was how the rescue teams found him. A small human soldier, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies, holding a sleeping alien child. The image was captured and sent across the galaxy. It became the symbol of the battle. The symbol of what humans could do when they decided something was worth fighting for. Weeks later, the Galactic Assembly held a special ceremony. Captain Do-hyun and his squad received the highest honors from a dozen species. They were called heroes, legends, saviors. The Vorath Empire began to collapse. Other conquered species saw what had happened at Meridian 7 and found their courage. Rebellions broke out on 100 worlds. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries crumbled within a year. Humanity was recognized as a major power. The tiny species from the backwater planet had proven itself in the most dramatic way possible. At the ceremony, a reporter asked Lieutenant Yuna to explain their victory. How had 12 soldiers held against 40,000? Yuna thought for a moment before answering. Heroism? She said. No, we were just 12 people who refused to let evil win. We saw innocent people in danger, and we decided to help. We got knocked down, and we got back up. We ran out of bullets, so we used knives. We ran out of strength, so we used will. That is not heroism. That is just being human. The reporter did not fully understand. But the galaxy remembered. A new saying spread among the stars, whispered in cantinas and command centers, in schools and homes. Never mock the tiny army. You never know when there might be humans in it. And somewhere, on a peaceful blue planet called Earth, children looked up at the stars and dreamed of the day they might stand against impossible odds, because that was what humans did. They fought. They endured. They won. Not because they were the biggest or the strongest, but because they simply refused to lose.